I met David Milch, and we became friends, but we weren't working together when he first came out from the East Coast. And I wanted to get, he wasn't interested in the Writers Guild at all, but there was a strike. It was an impending strike. I said, David, you have to go to these strike meetings. I mean, I'm not suggesting we run for offices or anything, but the Guild is important when issues come to whether there's going to be a strike or not. So he said, okay. So we were going to a strike meeting, and he had just been hired. I knew he worked on Hill Street, but I didn't know that he and Jeff were taking over the show.
This is Jeff Lewis?
Yeah. And so we were driving to the meeting, and he said, would you ever consider working on a TV show? You know, I said, yeah. I mean, I like television. I started in television, but I don't know anything about it. And he said, would you want to work? We're going to be doing Hill Street Blues. I loved the show. I knew the show. And he said, would you like to write on it, be a writer on it? And I said, yeah, absolutely. How do you write those shows? I mean, I didn't even know how they wrote them. And he said, I hardly know myself. I mean, I'm new to, David. And he said, but we're running the show. We got to find writers. So that was how I got the job.
So how did you learn to write the show?
Well, I said, let me do a sample script. And he said, it was funny because I don't know whether I gave him the idea or they had it, or it kind of came out of the original Wolper thing of they give you something to do and then they pick the best, I said, why don't you give me a sample script to do, or give them out to people that you want to hire, make them, see which ones work. That way, before you hire them, they've written a show. So they did that. They did it with me, they did it with Dick Wolf, and they did it with a couple of people that didn't get hired. And so I went over to the studio and I had watched the show, but I hadn't watched every single episode. But I went over and I watched all episodes up to then.
And you joined in season 6, right? So
yeah,
5 seasons of
yeah.
shows?
So I just sat in a room watching the show all day. And then, I'd had some feature experience with underworld characters and cops and so forth, so it wasn't a completely, new thing for me. I wrote the script, and Jeff and David said, absolutely, you should work on the show. So they hired me as a co-EP. And then we read the rest of the scripts, and then we picked Dick for story editor.